I'm not my own toughest critic, we're not going to be the success we are today, because it is my job to make sure I'm better and better every day. So yes, I was very blessed to have the name Bigelow and very blessed to be given the opportunity. But I will tell you, after that, it's 100% you, and it'll fail on your shoulders or it'll succeed based on what you're able to do with that business. So I am very proud that I've been able to run this business for so long and it be growing and growing like it is. I have great people around me. This is the reason why we're growing. But you might have the name, but that doesn't mean you have the skill sets. You've got to prove you've got those skill sets every day.
Sylvia and me.
Sylvia and
Sylvia and me. Sylvia
Sylvia. Sylvia and me.
Sylvia and me.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Beckerman, host of the podcast series Sylvia and Me, conversations with extraordinary, inspiring women.
Hi, I am Cindi Bigelow, third generation Bigelow Tea CEO and president of a wonderful family business. It's been in the family business for 80 years. And I'm so excited to be here. And I want to welcome you to Sylvia and Me.
Cindi, it is such a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time, because you might be just a little busy running a national market leader of specialty teas, and also you've raised two wonderful children. So what I'd like to do is a couple of things. We're just going to talk and chat. And you, as you said, third generation. In fact, your grandmother started the business in 1945.
Absolutely, she did, which is really, if you think about it back then, so unusual.
So unusual.
Such an uphill battle. And there's a lot of lessons I learned from her.
Okay. So the first thing I want to do is, there's always these perceptions of family businesses. You're running the family business. You probably just got in. Can you bust that myth of what, a family business? Because you cannot be running a business like Bigelow Tea just because you were born into it.
Right. I think that's a great question. And I think that's a fair conversation for people to have. Hey, I'm a family member, I'm a Bigelow, of course they're going to give it to you. And all right, maybe from a baton passing, there's an element of reality to that, but you are not going to be able to sustain a business. I've been doing this now for 35 years. You can't grow a business year after year after year just because you have a name. That will never be. And so it's like in any business, whether it's a private business, it's a public business, it's nonprofit, profit, the person at the top has to have the appropriate skill sets, has to challenge themselves to be better every day, has to make sure they're getting good counsel, and is really has to be the toughest critic. So if I'm not my own toughest critic, we're not going to be the success we are today, because it is my job to make sure I'm better and better every day. So yes, I was very blessed to have the name Bigelow and very blessed to be given the opportunity. But I will tell you, after that, it's 100% you, and it'll fail on your shoulders or it'll succeed based on what you're able to do with that business. So I am very proud that I've been able to run this business for so long and it be growing and growing like it is. I have great people around me. This is the reason why we're growing. But you might have the name, but that doesn't mean you have the skill sets. You've got to prove you've got those skill sets every day.
Well, as you said, the company has been in business since 1945 and it's successful.
Yeah.
And you took over the reins of the president and CEO of the company back in 2005, just yesterday. And within that time, you've put out quite a number of initiatives. One of which is Bigelow Tea's strive towards sustainability.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what that means? The sustainability is a word that's been thrown around, but you've actually done something.
Well, for me, I try to look at every element of the business, and I look at business as a force for good. And doing your part from a global perspective, from a community perspective, that's part of like making a difference, making the world a better place, leaving it better after you leave it, if at all possible. And so the sustainability work really started, when my kids were in third and fifth grade and they were coming back home in elementary school and talking about recycling. And I wasn't recycling. I didn't really know much about it. And, kids are, well, we have to do this for school. And I started to think about it and do my part at home. And I came into the business back then, which now we're talking in the 90s. And I was like, okay, what are we doing here? And so that's really how it started. It really, it was a game of inches. And, a lot of people, which they often do in my career, look at me like, what is she talking about? But I knew it was just the right thing to do. I wasn't trying to achieve these monumental accomplishments in a short period of time, but I said, hey, we can try, we can start. And so back in the late 90s, we just started to, talk about some things that we could do that weren't really that painful, but we could start. It was a discipline. And that discipline by, early mid 2005, 6 really kind of sunk into the DNA. And by 2010, 15, 20, and now 22, it's really who we are. We think very much about every piece of paper. How do we reduce waste? How do we not even compost? How do we remove waste from our system? So whether it's solar panels, looking at geothermal, efficiencies with all of our energy usage. I'm very, very blessed. We're a zero waste to landfill organization, which is very hard to accomplish when you're making 2 billion tea bags a year. You are producing a lot of waste. But I really would say everyone's on board. We've got a lot of real drivers in each facility that keeps this going. And as I said, it started just because, hey, why are we not? Right? No strategic vision, just why are we not?
And it came from your children coming home from school,
Yeah.
which I think is fantastic.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, David.
Ideas come from all over, and there you go. Straight from there. You mentioned something. We talked a little bit about your grandmother having started this company back in 1945, which had to be beyond, and anyone could imagine a woman building a company that has now been as successful as it is. And you spoke about lessons. You've learned some lessons from your grandmother. Yeah. I was going to ask you about lessons you learned from your father, because you had a TED talk about that. And you mentioned 3 things. One had to do with stamps. The other one had to do with safe family space. And the third thing had to do with the value of pride, putting pride in others.
And appreciation. Yes.
You have said repeatedly that everyone really has a lesson that someone can learn from if you're able to have your ears open to hear not just what you want to hear, but maybe stuff that you don't. Can you give an example? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but lessons learned from your grandmother.
Well, my grandmother, more of what my lessons were for reading about her, right? Because she died when I was 6 years old, but there was so much that I read about her. And it was really getting into some of her journals where she's talking about how discouraged she is because it's starting a business. It's a product that nobody knows. She's a woman and she's just dealing with one hurdle after another. And so she calls her sister, Lois Campbell. And Lois Campbell shares with her a story of when Mama moved the pony stable. And she shares how this story was the kids of my great grandmother, was Ruth and Lois, want her to move this pony stable because they've moved to another part of Rhode Island, and Bottoms is this pony that's going with them and they want the stable. And she says, no, I can't do it. And the kids convince her. So she's going to move this pony stable and she has to take it through the streets of Providence on a carriage, and people are heckling and heckling and heckling. And she doesn't care. She says, I want to do it because my kids want to do it. And that night the pony stable is there and Bottoms is in the pony stable. And Lois says to Ruth, my grandmother's discouraged. She goes, don't forget when Mama moved the pony stable. And I could cry just sharing that story because it was just like, you can do things that are impossible. You just have to figure out a way. And the tenacity and the ability to get past the no is what I really learned from my grandmother.
which is it's a big lesson,
Right.
a huge lesson, because what you've accomplished is that balancing between career and family. And you're in a family business. So I know that one of the things that is very, very important to you, which you do, and I'll let you tell the story, but scheduling family time and phone. How does the phone work in there?
Well, as you and I were actually talking earlier before we started our podcast, I was saying the thing I'm the most proud of is my children. And as a working mother, I remember I also had flex schedule, which was great. But everyone at Bigelow, we started flex schedule before people were talking about flex schedules. But I remember my kids saying to me, "You're the only mother that works." I'm like, "I'm not the only mother that works, but thank you very much for pointing out that I do work." But what I did in order to make sure that I was the best mother that I could be, that's, they always say you want it all, right? Yeah, I want to be a full-time mom and a full-time, individual at Bigelow Tea. What I did is I scheduled. So, if that was Wednesday reading in the classroom, or Tuesday art in the classroom, or Thursday on the playground for recess, watching it, whatever the days of the month I was able to do that. That was scheduled. That was locked and loaded, and nothing got in the way of that. And as they got older, my phone was always on. So I didn't care what the meeting was. When that phone rang, I was up and out. And I gave that as the same rule for everyone that worked for me. If that's your family on that phone, get out. You don't even have to say a word. And I remember always doing this, always being available, always being available. And another little small side note, David would call me sometimes at 7:00 at night. I'd be in the office. He goes, "I'm starving, Mom. I'm going to eat now." And I'd be like, "Don't you dare eat now. I'm getting in the car. If you eat, it's going to be curtains for you." So I would rush home and we would have dinner. So I always tried to make sure I was there for that. But again, phone on, phone on, phone on. So one year my son was interning here, and he said, "Ma, you're like so busy. You're running from meeting to meeting. How are you always available on the phone?" And then he realized by the end of the internship, you just answer it in the middle of meetings. That's why you're always available for us on the phone. So phone and scheduling were my key to being the best I could be in terms of always available, and them feeling like their mother was always right there at their fingertips. So yeah, worked for me.
That's so important. And that's what a lot of women don't understand. They find it, there are certain things that we have to put that are a priority before. And sometimes in a workplace, that's not acceptable.
Yes.
And that is,
Yes.
isn't that a shame?
Yes.
Just like you said, you had flex time.
Yes.
My being a single mom working, anyone that came in, all I wanted them to do was tell me the truth. Do you have childcare? Because I'll work around it. And everyone was so afraid of saying anything that we get put in these positions. That isn't that wonderful that your son realized what had been taking place all those years.
But Sylvia, you really say something that's so important. You need businesses that understand that. I think today after COVID, that is a COVID positive. People do realize that you do need to be flexible, that family is so important. I mean, these people, many of them had to stay home and homeschool their kids basically for 2 years, but not enough businesses do this. I'll never forget a good dear friend of mine said to me once, who has 3 children, "I would never tell anyone at work I even had children because I was afraid if I did, I would never see a promotion." It's like, what? And at Bigelow, as a family company, we were doing flex time in the 90s.
Because it wasn't,
women that are still here were working 3 days a week, 4 days a week, whatever. I mean, there were adjustments, of course, based on that, but I mean, absolutely. And I always say, you've got to give that to women that want to raise their family so they don't have to make a choice, either one or the other. Keep their foot in the door, keep them engaged. It's just so interesting to me. I was at my graduate school and I was speaking with many other women. I was just a small panelist in this huge event at my graduate school. And these women were saying, no one's talking about the choice we have to make, that we're all in or we're all out. And I'm like, that's not right. Why are we not talking about that gray space to keep talented women engaged? I mean, as soon as the woman even looks like she might never get pregnant, we make sure we say, we have flex time here. flex schedule. Don't you worry. We are here for you.
Well, it wasn't that long ago that married women were not supposed to work. In fact, I believe there were a couple of states where they were not allowed to work. And the minute someone became pregnant, they were fired.
Oh my God.
And people don't understand that was back in the 70s, the 60s, in the 50s, there were some laws. We assume certain things, but they weren't always here.
And we shouldn't assume, because we've seen rights can be taken away. So we have to be very careful, very vigilant about these kind of things. So luckily, women are in high demand in the workplace. Women are exceedingly talented, and hopefully women are not going to lose their voice about their rights. And they have a right to raise a family and also work.
That's exactly. So on that, we talked about some of the lessons where you get your moxie, your, I would call chutzpah, move forward and you're not afraid. You are very involved in community projects, and there's a big charity event coming up, which you initiated back in 1987. It's called the annual Bigelow Tea Community Challenge.
Yeah, the first one was in 1988. I am not married now, but it was on my wedding day. True story. The first one was on my wedding day, and I actually ran in the event, and then I got married later that day. Isn't that funny? But it started in 87 because the Bigelow Tea Community Challenge was based on the fact that there was a buyer. I was cost accountant at the time. There was a buyer across the hall from me, very small offices. This was a very small place we worked for in Norwalk, called very close. I think mine was a closet before it was an office. And he lost his son, Dave Shalevitz, in a car accident. And the buyer was Don across the way. And I remember just sitting in my office feeling so terrible for this man. I really was too young to even know what to say. And talk about the Bigelow name. I don't think he liked me because of my last name, to be honest. So it doesn't always come with a good thing when you've got the name, because people make assumptions, right? It's okay. He was a lovely man. So I said, what can we do? And so we just put on this local little race. It was inside Bigelow Tea. I think we raised $3,000. All of the money came from us, the Bigelow people. And it was 50 people ran it. My mom, my dad, a bunch of us. Very fun story. And then after that first year, that $3,000 went to the high school to put a scholarship in Dave Shalevitz's name. And then the next year we said, why don't we continue to do this? And we moved up to Norwalk, Fairfield, Connecticut after that, and brought our race up with us. And it just went year after year after year. And now, we have raised over $2 million, which I'm really proud of. We raised about $160,000, $170,000 a year. And all goes to these wonderful charities in the Bridgeport area, for the most part, Fairfield, Bridgeport. And so we're just really proud of it. We have about 700-800 people that are part of the event. And you think about how it started and what a beautiful community event it is. It's got a kids fun run, and it's got a non-competitive walk, and it's got a race, and we have music and food and beer and whatever we have, iced tea. And I just look at it and I so smile, and I'm so proud of it. And I just think about me sitting in the office back in 1987 and just saying, gosh, I wish there was something I could do to help with this man's pain. And I say to people, if anyone's listening to us today, is that you can do such good work, and it doesn't have to start out as this major strategic vision, just like sustainability. It doesn't have to be a strategic vision. It just has to be because a little voice says to you, that would be a good thing to do. Why don't we do that? And then you never know where it's going to go. Never.
That goes back to when I said your dad, you talked about lessons you learned from your dad. One of the things you said is you can learn a lesson from anyone, just around. It doesn't have to be big. And that's the whole idea. People don't have to come up with these huge ideas. Just think, trying to help that one person, look what it led to. You don't have to look for a panacea, the pot of gold at the end. You can just take a look and see what can happen now.
Yeah, it's amazing. The old saying, one foot in front of another. And then when you ask another person to walk by your side and then another person walks by there, what you can get done. I found, especially in the world of community giving and also for sustainability, I think everybody wants it. Most people want to do good work. Most people really would like to, and they don't necessarily know how. So
That's
if you can say to them, here's a small task, would you mind doing this? You'd be surprised how happy they are to do that. And then once they've gained the confidence to say, that was easy, you got another one for me? So it's really just about putting the opportunity out there in bite-sized pieces, right? Bite-sized pieces. We don't all have to, build Boys and Girls Clubs, it's great if we could, but we can't all do that, but we can all make a difference every day. And it's kind of, moving all together. If you can get that energy, whether it's sustainability or giving back to the community or doing something, the good work you can all do, it starts to really make a difference. And that's what I've seen in all my years on this earth, is that you really start to see it build, like the sustainability, where we are today versus where we started, right? It does start to, the flywheel really starts, and then you really get to see it take off.
The one thing about tea is it's always been associated with comfort. I know my mother always gave, back then there was only really one brand of tea that she ever drank. And
Lipton tea?
You got it.
That's it, of course. I love that.
I used to have it with milk.
Lipton.
Because my grandmother had grown up in London, so she always drank it with milk. Lipton tea.
We do too. I love Lipton. It's all good.
And you now have a benefits wellness line, I believe, came out.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you talk just a little bit about that? You can promote it, but why, considering tea has always been comfort,
Healthy.
How does this go a step further?
Well, we're always saying, what more do we need to give the consumer, right? And for me, who's tried to live a healthy living for many, many years, again, starting with my children, they started to have to see a naturopath. I had to start to only go and get things that didn't have sugar and didn't have any preservatives in it. And so for many, many years, that has been my way of addressing some of the health issues that my children had. My son was asking me recently, how did I get involved with that? I said, because of you guys, right? Megan had some issues, you had some issues. And so I turned to the natural world to help me resolve what I was not able to resolve other ways. And so when I'm thinking about lines and what people need for the wellness line, now we're looking at some major conditions that are out there. So for example, sleep. That's a big deal. I can't tell you how many women talk to me about the fact that they can't sleep. GERD, acid reflux. How many people are dealing with that? So there's just so many categories of issues that people are talking about. How could I help that in any way possible? So we got together and we identified really the 7 areas that we felt were unfortunately areas of growing concern that we could be a little bit of a part of, right? We're not doctors. We're not in the, we're not giving you prescription drugs. And so we identified these 7 areas. And then from those areas, we built the herbs that are renowned in supporting those particular categories. And that's how the wellness line was built. It was literally built first category, second, what are the herbs are, and then third, they had to taste delicious, because that's what we do. It's about a wonderful experience. And then we also wanted to make sure it didn't have to be a dietary supplement, which means you need to have these warnings all over it, which to me is a little concerning when you're having a product with warnings all over it. So it's been a real success for us, and especially things like I said, sleep was our number one. This was all before COVID, right? Stay well, that was our second one, and especially during COVID, everyone was trying to do things to keep their body healthy. Calm stomach was an unbelievable one. Now we have stress free, which is the rose mint. Who doesn't want a little less stress in their life? So I mean, these are categories that are built on the real deal, but still, no dietary supplement. You don't have any warnings on it. You can drink as much as you want, and they're delicious. So that's kind of how the wellness started. And it's a line I'm very proud of.
So what's next?
Well, one thing was funny. I'm drinking right here. And before we had our interview today for our podcast, I'm drinking our botanical line. And the botanical line we just designed based on, again, conversation, Sylvia, like this, where women say, I need to drink more water, right? And so this was done before COVID. And one of the first things I said, if you got COVID, is you have to drink a lot more water. But in general, I was saying we need to drink more water. Everyone's saying we need to drink more water. So we said, how do we use a tea bag to help in this process and remove the having to boil the water and all the other stuff that goes with it. So we designed a botanical line, an all natural, gorgeous botanical line that all you do is you just take your tea bag and you just put it in your water and you let it seep and it infuses over the next 5 to 10 minutes. I'm always drinking it with the tea tag hanging out of it. And now easily I'll drink 60 ounces of water a day easily. And I was just saying to our director of marketing prior to our talking today, I said, I can't tell you how much water I have drank because of this botanical line. I can't measure how much more water. So again, the idea germinated from we, especially women, need to drink more water. We want to drink more water. For me, I don't like to drink water. I find it boring. Some women love it. Some men love it. My son drinks 120 ounces a day. I think he drinks too much water. He's going to drown. But, for me, the botanical did exactly what it's supposed to do. And it's doing exceedingly well for us because women and men are resonating. And for their kids, there's no calories, right? Nothing artificial. And it's not an iced tea. It is not an iced tea. It's an infused botanical water. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Okay. I might just start drinking more water. Cindi, I want to thank you for taking the time today out of your busy schedule. Oh, right. You have nothing to do. I forgot. Your community challenge, as I think I mentioned, Bigelow is headquartered in Fairfield, Connecticut, my hometown right now. And you have the community challenge coming up, I believe, the last September, which we checked is September 25th. We will be dropping this, as they say, airing this podcast before then. Where can people find out more about Bigelow and you and all the great things that you've done?
Just go to bigelowtea.com. You can register for the event. You can donate to the event. Although you really should come because it's unbelievable t-shirt and goodie bags. We pride ourselves on that. Amazing raffles. It's insane how beautiful this event is. Or you could just go on bigelowtea.com and find out about our newest teas or recipes or, all kinds of fun stuff. Videos that we do. We just actually released a video on sustainability. So lots of fun stuff I think happens on bigelowtea.com. And it's kind of fun also to know a little bit more about the company. If you do drink Bigelow, to know about the company. Who are these people? What do they stand for? Right. So, I look at bigelowtea.com as a way to become part of the family.
What message would you give to women today?
First of all, thank you for making the world a better place. We need you. And we need you to be engaged, and we need you to understand how valuable you are and the difference that you make in this world, and use your skills every day, whether it's family, whether it's work, whether it's community, or wherever you choose to make the world a better place every day, because that's what we can do. That's what we do. And I think we need to be appreciative for it. We need to appreciate ourselves because we need a lot more of that.
Cindi, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Sylvia. How very fun to get a chance to chat for a little while. I really appreciate it. I loved it.
You can find us on all of your popular podcast platforms. And of course, our website, sylviame.com. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay tuned.